Yeah, it's been a while since I shot the B-roll. What? How did you know? Uh-huh. My shirt, what about it? Yeah, I've been wearing the same thing since the B-roll. So? It's not like they can tell. Oh shit! I know I have a lot of videos about programming realistic instruments, but since I hit 1000 subscribers, thank you subscribers. Thank you so much for showing your support and your love in the comments and through your subscriptions and through your regular viewership. I would like to do something a little different, but at the same time something familiar. I've decided to take all the content from my realistic programming series and cram them into one video that basically explains every single trick that I have up my sleeve, which I use for programming realistic instruments, based on my understanding of how they work and based on my exploration and my experience. Hey guys, my name is Avik D'Souza, and if you found that intro video weird, you must be new here. Let's fix that. Get subscribed. Well, over the years, I have been obsessed with being able to do cinematic compositions on FL Studio or any DAW for that matter, and I just thought that maybe my technique was wrong and that if I use my crappy plugins as hard as possible, using as many tricks as possible, that I could make them sound a little bit more realistic. And this sort of worked because I was able to achieve a lot with very inferior plugins. Take Sakura Gravity for example. I don't have the project anymore to prove this to you, but believe it or not, I used only FL Studio stock plugins for most of the orchestral sounding stuff. Except for a few other bits which I did not show in the preview. Most of this composition was actually made in FL Studio using FL Studio stock plugins. FL Studio and a lot of DAWs have come a long way since 2017 when I composed that piece, and I think it is now possible to actually get a lot of mileage with your stock plugins. That being said, it doesn't hurt to have something a little better, and I would recommend the complete ultimate bundle for the biggest bang for buck, the most number of sounds, plugins and effects that you can get for the least amount of money. There's simply nothing else on the market that can rival the Native Instruments bundle, and if I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments. I actually would like to try something different. Alright, enough chit chat, let's just get right into the video. Alright, I have 7 instruments over here, and if you notice, they are your standard piano, strings, guitar, bass, drums, brass and dollar store brass. Well, the thing is, brass is actually a premium, not premium, but a paid content library for Kontakt, and dollar store brass is actually the default brass patch within FL Studio, and this is what they both sound like. And this is what the dollar store brass sounds like. I'm pretty sure most of y'all are stuck with the latter if y'all cannot afford the former, which is fine. I will teach you how to make the dollar store brass sound more expensive, like a proper brass. Alright, what we're going to do is give a listen to what I have going over here and see how we can make this more real. It sounds fine. You know what, I'm just gonna export this as a WAV file right over here, and we're done. I love how fast FL Studio is. We're gonna take this and drag this down here into a new audio track, and we're gonna mute this so we can compare how this sounds we can compare how the more realistic version sounds like this, compared to this. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to check out these pianos. Okay, this is the Addictive Keys plugin. Sounds okay. What we're going to do is we're going to make it sound better. The first thing we're going to do is see if we can strum it. Okay, so this is the strength of the strum. This is the tension. We're going to have the tension to be on a bit on this side, and we're going to have the strength be quite low. We're going to have a velocity offset. This is if every velocity is the same. We're going to have the lower notes be softer than the higher notes, just a bit, not by much. We're going to accept this. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to randomize the velocities a bit more. Just a bit, okay, not much. Maybe give it a few seeds until we see something we like, and accept. Okay, that sounds better. What we're going to do is, because we have some notes overlapping into the next chord, we're going to just slice these so that they don't cause any weird MIDI issues later, and especially so that we can loop this properly. Oops. We're going to chop them all just like this. It's going to sound pretty much the same, but it's just going to stop us from having issues later. Right, next what we're going to do is we are going to make everything a little softer. Actually, right here should be fine. By using a scale multiplier, sorry, a level scaler. So it sounds more gentle, like someone's not banging on the keys but actually playing it gently, you know. Okay, we pretty much have something that sounds pretty decent. We're going to offset a few of these manually by switching off the quantize option and maybe moving this a bit to the right, moving this, and maybe let's say moving this and this a bit to the left, and then we're going to again go and chop all of these after quantizing our notes. So like that. Oops, just chop it away so that there's no weird overlaps in audio, in MIDI notes. I don't think this last one needs any, but we're going to do it anyway. Now it's not perfectly quantized. All right, it's hard to say even for me, but it's going to add up as we keep doing this across the other instruments. This is what we can do for the piano at the moment. We're going to leave this be and come back to it later. Next, we're going to go to the guitar. This is what it sounds like. Right off the bat, this sounds really boring. So the first thing we're going to do is sustain everything. Right, so you can see that the chord changes here right down at the third bar. So if I enable the piano and I play this, so we're going to sustain everything until it stops right over here. So we're going to take these and we're going to sustain them until they touch each other, and then chop off the remaining. We're going to do the same with these. We don't need to sustain that last one since it's already touching the end of the bar, and that's all we're going to do. Sounds much better already, right? So we're going to do the same over here and here. Oops. And chop off the excess. Let's see if our plugin has some feature to help us make the guitar stand out from the piano a bit more. Well, it has something called doubling, which sounds like two guitars playing side by side, or if you take the same guitar track and record it again, you will get a slightly different sound. So this helps us humanize things a little bit more. Sounds better. Okay, I'll take that. I'll take that. That sounds pretty decent. So we'll and we'll drop these velocities down as well, because I don't like them being so loud. And we'll do that with scale levels. Next thing is these high notes, we're going to raise them slightly above the rest, like that. Da, 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 da. Yep, that sounds good. That sounds good. Then we're going to take the whole thing and we're going to randomize it ever so slightly, so that so it doesn't sound too mechanical. Nice. We'll see if we can add some additional sounds. This particular plugin has fret sounds and stuff, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Right here. Okay, we can have that. This works for me, so I'm gonna have this right over here. Oh, that's an F. Right over here. Should be slightly before the chord changes actually. A little softer. Sometimes this happens automatically with certain really good plugins, but not always. So we'll have one more here. I'll change the velocity of this ever so slightly. Even if you play the same velocities, it will change. This is called round robin, and we'll come to this in a bit, and I'll tell you why it's important. You may not need this all the time, maybe just once is fine. Alright, next what we're going to do is go to the bass. Let's see what we can change about this. This sounds a little bit too raw for my taste. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send this straight into an amp. And I have just the thing over here, which is my favorite. Sounds more beefier now, right? So, yep. Maybe bump up the bass a bit because I like it a little more beefy. Drop the levels. And this is without touching a single equalizer plugin. You can find lots of free bass amps around. If I can find any, I will definitely link them in the description down below. That's our first thing, is to make the bass sound a little more meatier. The next thing we want to do is we want to emphasize these mutes right over here, right? Because everywhere else it's just continuous. These notes are continuous. They're just touching each other. But this break over here needs to be emphasized. So we're going to add a tap. We have two taps over here. We're going to alternate between them. Makes everything sound a little bit more believable now. And we're going to randomize the levels a bit, ever so slightly as well. Always randomize. We'll come back to this. We'll see if we can make it work better with the drums, because right now it sounds kind of dry if you combine it with the drums. There's something very wrong with these drums. What could it be? I don't know. Let's try doing this. those hi-hats sound really mechanical. They are what we call machine gunning. So most plugins that, especially sampling plugins like this drum sampler, have something called round robin. If you notice, I actually have a lot of samples over here. These are different samples. So at different velocities, different ones get triggered, right? It's impossible to see them all at once. Let me see if I can. Yes, here we can see all of them at once. So this is low velocity and this is high velocity, and when we go from soft to loud, that's what happens. So what we're going to do is we're going to do something called round robin. So without changing the velocity, we're going to try and make this sound more realistic. Do you notice it is switching between these two? Because at this particular velocity, one of these gets triggered. So now it's switching between this and the previous sample. And there's a bit of an overlap here, and that tells it that it should round robin. If I actually were to increase the overlap a bit more, it cycles between 3, but generally this is not something that sounds too good. It's better to have them just be alternating, or like in multiples of 2, 4, 6, like that, but not odd numbers, because it will not sound as good. Because most of the times when any groove is played, any note is played, it's played in groups of 2. Even if it's in groups of 3, it's going to be double, or it's going to be in a bar, it's going to be like 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's going to be like 3 groups, and it'll be 3 into 4, which would be 12. So it's always going to be an even number. So to prove that, to show you that, what I'm going to do is change this groove a bit. Something a bit more like Hotel California. So I'm going to take this. Oops. Say. Right? If I were to use no round robin, this is what it would sound like. I think I messed up at the end. Yeah. Without round robin, with round robin. Let's try making it 3. It doesn't have that, it doesn't sound as random, so we're going to just keep it as 2. And something very important, we're going to take these other notes, and we're not going to stress them as much, because usually when you're playing a hi-hat ostinato, which I've explained in my programming drums video, what you're going to do is, usually on the count, that is on the 1, 2, 3, 4, you're going to have these notes be louder than the rest. But since they're already quite loud, as you can see down below, I'm going to scale them down, because I don't want them to be this loud. Right? This is what it sounds like without it. This is what it sounds like with it. Oops, oops, oops. Yeah, I can get behind that. The second thing what we want to do is we want to fill up this groove a bit more to make it sound more realistic. So we're going to do something quite similar. There's something very wrong with how this sounds. See, these are our main snare strikes that was there before. We want these to be loud, but we want everything else to be as soft as possible, because these are what we call ghost notes. Sounds much better, right? Oops. So on every upbeat, we're gonna have this snare. This is not something you strictly need to do. This is just the way I like to play drums, or for that matter, program them. Oops. We're gonna make this one just before the main snare hit even softer we'll just scale levels actually, to have more control over our groove. Sounds a little more tighter now. And this is going to be an open hi-hat. We're going to have a bit of an accent on it so that it sounds good. Yeah, I like that. This even works on something like the Ride. Yep, works just fine. And how does it sound with the bass? There's something very important about writing bass and drums, is that they should work together really well, like tight. They should be tight. They should sound nice together, like one groove, like one instrument. What about, let's try something. I don't know if it's going to work. If it doesn't, we're not going to do it. I want these to be very, very short. So we're going to like even half them. And instead of this slap, maybe this is a bit unconventional. If you remember, I did say in my bass programming tutorial, do not use two notes at the same time on a bass. So this works because they're really far away from each other. As you notice, this is the final string on the bottom of the bass. Here it's the top, because actually this is the top of the bass and this is the bottom. The bass is upside down, so that it's more easier for people who especially play bass to see what they're doing. It's from the point of view of the player, not from the point of view of the audience, so that's why the bass is upside down. And you can see that the string is free to resonate while the other strings play. We can make this go all the way to here and have our mute be right there, and it's not going to affect anything. Right, so here, this is where it gets muted, and you can hear it automatically mute. So I like that. I think we'll keep it.
This bass line is a bit too dynamic. I think we'll just keep it simple. Sometimes simple is best. That's a lot of undos. I think it's a classic example of how not to overdo it. Just keep it about right. Alright, we have these strings. I think these strings could complement our drums a bit more. Here's what they're doing. It sounds very nice, but I don't think this is a bit too simplistic and probably not very inappropriate. Maybe during the chorus of the song or the very end, it's fine, but no. So we're going to use something called key switch. Key switch. What is key switch? Key switch is right over here. You can see C -1, C sharp -1, D -1. What are these? Here, this sustains. This is staccato. If you hit the C -1, which is a really low C actually, on FL Studio it would be C0. This is, you can see, pun unintended. If I were to minimize this so that we can see what we're doing, we have our plugin over here. I'm going to snap this to this, and I'm going to extend it so we have more space. If I were to press these notes, nothing happens, but then when I reach a little higher, you can see something's happening. So these are too low for the strings actually. The lowest note of this double bass starts with this C. There's nothing below that. So we have these notes that are our key switches, and you on different plugins, they can be either high up the keyboard, right up over here, or even down here. And some of Native Instruments' own plugins use these interchangeably, so you need to figure which one is which. There are two things. There's something called key switch, and then there's something called velocity switch. Velocity switch is a little different, and that is, so let's switch this to velocity switch. If a note is triggered at a low volume, at a low velocity, this is what it'll sound like. And if I have my switch go to accented, or let's say maybe so it's clearly audible, staccato, let's hear what that sounds like. We'll solo this so it's easier to hear. And if we were to accent it at a particular velocity determined by this particular slider, so if I set it at 100 and I reduce this to 100, here it's given in percentage, but okay, just a bit louder than this, this is where it would switch. But if I were to move the slider up to 108, as you can see, the threshold is much higher, so I can, that's what it would sound like. I am not a fan of velocity switch. It works for certain things, like if you want to overlay what do you call them, staccato notes with sustained notes, it's fine. This is a very good using velocity switches mainly for performance, especially for keyboardists who want to be playing string sections or something else. Velocity switch makes a lot of sense. On the other hand, key switch is a lot better for programming things, but I prefer this method, to be honest, because I can choose what I want. So here, since we are only going to stick with staccato notes, I'm going to leave it on staccato. And if you want to seal that deal, then you can, it says C sharp 1 over here, so this is C sharp or D flat. We're going to keep that, and we're going to like sustain this all the way till here. This is not going to be audible. This is just making sure that it doesn't switch to anything else. If I accidentally press this but I hit play, it goes straight back to staccato. So let's see what we can do with this. I'm going to make these normal 16th notes. That's really slow. Let's just copy paste it, and copy paste it here as well. Yep, that's what we want. This is why it's very important to sing what you're doing. I don't know how this is gonna sound. Let's hope it sounds good. Next, we're gonna use something called counterpoint to make this sound a little more harmonic. And you know what I'm gonna do? I'm actually gonna just let this keep going and let's hear how that sounds. I want these notes to be softer than their lower counterparts, so we're gonna scale them down. Much better. Now, this sounds fine, but it doesn't sound like how I would want it to sound. So we're gonna select all but the first note of every other measure, other count I mean, and just go like this. And we're gonna scale their velocities down so that what it'll sound like soloed. So these are ever so slightly louder. In fact, we can probably exaggerate that a bit more by selecting these and scaling them up. And this is one of the reasons why I don't use velocity switching and prefer to use key switching. We are gonna scale these up to the sky. This makes sense. Oops. Yep. This already sounds better than this. What we're going to do is we're going to use another trick of mine, and that's called a flam, to make these sound a little more interesting. Right here. This is our trigger point. So what we're going to do is we are going to make these 30-second steps, and that sounds fine, but it's not what we want it to sound like. So here, this is where round robin comes in. Again, we're going to enable that. Okay. Sounds a little more realistic. What we're going to do is, as these notes progress, sorry about that, we're going to scale them down. Not scale them exactly, but kind of step them down like this. This is what happens when you bounce a stick onto a snare head. This is a very simple way of doing it, but if you want to sound a little bit more realistic, my tongue's all over the place today. I would just have 3 of these, but kind of that sounds a little more cleaner. this is already a lot more dramatic. Now I'm going to show you another trick, and this one is a mixing trick instead of being a programming trick. So let's program something pretty nice and nice over here. Here I'm going to show you something. If I use several velocities on this, if I were to do something like this and then max out this velocity, do you notice that the sound has a bit more of a bite to it? Now if I were to copy this and use my cheapo FL Studio brass section, it sounds the same, it's just louder. We don't want that. We want it to sound more realistic, right? So we're going to take our dollar store brass which for some reason is routed to this particular channel, and what we're going to do is we're going to use Maximus. This is what's called a dynamic controller, I think, a multiband dynamic multiband. It can be a compressor if you want it to be. It already looks like a compressor, more like a limiter, but you can make it do pretty much anything you want. What's basically happening is this is the input and this is the output, and this is nothing but a graph. We have the highs, mids and lows, and this is the master. So if you want to see what it sounds like, yeah, that's what it'll sound like. And I would not recommend you do something as stupid as this. This is just for educational purposes only. What we're going to do is we want our brass section to have more bite. So the first thing we're going to do is go to the Maximus. Go to the high dynamic controller and max this out. Okay, we can see something interesting happening. The high frequencies have become a lot more louder. We're going to want to bring this over here. Okay, and do this. And then bring this down to compensate for all the levels that we added. So if we were to do something like let's change these to actually staccato patches, so this is more evident. We will use full brass staccato. That sounds fine. And we were to repeat these. Right? If we did not have this Maximus enabled, this is what it would sound like. And if we were to accent these notes, it sounds okay. It's fine. It's just functional. But now they have a bit more bite. It's a little hard to tell, but they do actually have a bit more bite. If I were to monitor these bands, okay, what I can do is add an EQ to correct that. See, you can feel the difference in bite. Maybe add a bit of release. Yeah, that sounds a lot better. I actually like that. I really like that. So that's a start. That's definitely a good start. What I like to do is also to make this sound a little more finer, a little bit more organic, is to add, of course, first randomize the levels a bit. I forgot to do that, but yeah, let's just do that right now. Now with something that sounds this mechanical, a lot more difference in velocities makes a lot of sense. Sounds fine. I'll take it. And then what we're gonna do is head to the saturation knob and kind of dial this up and see what we get. Yeah, I like that. Move everything before the EQ. I like to always keep my EQ at the end so I can control everything. You can have more than one EQ, of course, but if you're starved for resources, this is a better way to go. That sounds a bit harsh, so we'll bring this down. Not necessarily the most appropriate thing for this arrangement, but we'll take it. What does this sound like, by the way? Yeah, you know what I'm going to do? Now I'm going to show you a spin-off of the same trick that I used, but on a proper... it says dollar store brass, but this is actually the regular brass. Just go brass. Oh shit, sorry. I don't know why it does that. I really hate it when it does that, but okay, fine. Okay, first thing we're going to do is we're going to put, if your DAW does not have a level over here, we're going to add a gain knob. So we're going to use yeah, we'll just use a Maximus to increase the levels, and sorry, we're going to use a sort of gain, if you will. All right, first thing is, if you have a gain plugin, you could use a gain plugin right here for the high-end brass plugin. What we're going to do is we're going to make this note become the second set of notes that you hear. That is a little more, make them ring out a bit more. And how we're going to do that is we're going to take these notes and we're going to move them here, and we're going to automate their levels before they hit the mixer, or at least in the mixer. So we're going to create an automation clip. Now what we're going to do is stagger them a bit. And these gaps are so that our horn players can draw breath because they need to breathe. We can add one more. This sounds fine. Sounds fine. What we're going to do is make it a little more dramatic. And how we're going to do that is by using our friend automation. And we are going to first copy this value, paste it over here. My apologies. And we're going to use the smooth modifier. So it's going to start out loud, become soft, and then become loud again. So like this. Does that make sense? We're going to need a bit more resolution on this, so we'll go with half beat. Right here. We want a slightly different curve. We want a single curve over here that kind of goes like this. I want this to be a bit more dramatic. Okay, now it sounds just like a bunch of levels varying, but remember what we did with this? So we're going to take these settings and copy them to the next. And we do that by copying the mixer state from one to the next. Well, the name has changed as well, but we'll ignore that. Okay, this sounds awful, but we'll fix it, no worries. We're going to drop this so that we maintain our levels with respect to each other. Compare this with this. Actually, let's switch off the effects so you can hear it better. Meh. Now with Maximus. Watch this. What I could also do is, as the levels go from soft to loud, I can have an inverse curve in the middle. I have never tried this before, but I think it'll work as well. The opposite of the high, and we first have to boost the pre. Could try that with the lows as well. That sounds amazing. It sounds very synthetic. Sounds far better. I learned this particular trick when using cheap sounding brass sections, and this is how I got them to sound better, and so how I could make them sound more dynamic. And I would hazard a guess that this is how they're actually made to sound more dynamic in the first place. Here's what saturation does. It kind of is missing its mojo. it makes everything sound a little bit more balanced. And then what we're going to do is add a parametric EQ to kind of tame the sound. This is where the bite is. Now let's see how this sounds with the rest of the song. Now let's mix this a bit so that it all sounds like it belongs to the same goddamn performance. We are going to make a bus channel that is just for the reverbs, and I like to have these in dark blue, and we shall call it Rome. We're going to use a convolution reverb to make everything sound a little tight because I don't want to work very hard. We are going to use maybe a hall of sorts, maybe an auditorium even. Doors in, doors out, wide back, maybe from the back, from the front better. And we're going to route everything parallelly to this. So we're going to select these, and we're going to my bad, and we're going to right click, route to this track. So now all of these go to this track. That's what this reverb sounds like. Okay, we want this to be 100% not dry. Okay. That's a big difference. It sounds very live now. Now I want these to be even more wet than all the others. I want them to sound more further off. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a send. Usually most pre-fader send, to be specific. Most DAWs, or I think all DAWs, have this particular feature. How it is implemented in your DAW will be very different from mine. So I would suggest finding out how to use a send knob. Now if I can find the damn thing, that would be perfect. I believe it's in the gain section. Yep, there it is. So we're going to pre-fader this. We're going to like max this out. So this is the first channel that it's sending to, number one, and number two. So here we're sending it to 2, from left to right. That's how you count. I wish they would show channel number instead, and that would make a lot more sense, but whatever, it is what it is. Now regardless of this level, it sounds more further off, right? I think an auditorium is not what we want. Maybe something more like a symphony hall or something, you know. Yeah, here we have large halls. We'll just take this, make it wet. We don't want our reverbs our bass frequencies reverberating all over the place. So we're going to high pass this large hall. This bit of EQ is so that we have our horns resonating around a little bit more. I can even try widening this, maybe just to hear how it sounds. This is mono, this is stereo. So yeah, not much, not that big of a deal, so I think leaving it in the middle is fine. I also want my strings to sound further off, so we're gonna do the same thing by going to the horn section, making them yellow so that we can identify them visually. Yes, thank you. And copying the send to our string section. So now our strings have a pre-fader send as well. Yep. I need to adjust the amount of send I'm sending over here, so I can just decrease this. I think the horns overall can come down, they're too dominating. I just forgot this does not work anymore. We have to use the send. How does it sound like compared to the original? Sounds very keyboard-like. You know what? I actually like those horns, those cheap ass horns. I like them. I'm gonna use them as well because I'm feeling very adventurous. You can hide anything that sounds like garbage with a reverb. True story. I'm pretty sure all the beginners over here watching this can relate, or all of us who are beginners at some point. For a more apples to apples comparison with the original, we can mute these actually, just to compare them properly. Kind of equate the volumes. I can actually just do this. Yep, I'll take it. There you go. Something way more dynamic, something way more realistic, something way more acceptable. I think this is where we can wrap it up. I'm gonna just give it one more play so we can all enjoy our hard work. probably just have some fun with it by having a verse chorus structure by simply taking out a few of these instruments and making some adjustments. We shall merge these and we shall do what we did earlier with the strings. Oops, that is a bit too much detail, too much information. What did we have here? We shall change this back to this and make sure that you have it trigger a wee bit earlier than it should, because the notes, FL Studio reads its notes top to bottom, so you might want to start it a bit earlier. Soften this as well. Now we have a proper verse chorus structure. Let's hear how that sounds. This is what it sounds like. If this was a verse, you could even take this out. And now we go to a chorus. Remember what I said about the riot symbol? It's something it's a textbook thing that I like to do. I think we can wrap it from here. I think it's a wrap. The crash is a little janky, but that's another story for another time. Let's call it a day. See ya.
Thank you so much for reaching this point in the video, and if you actually managed to stay this long, know that 90% of your friends aren't with you, which means that for the 10% of you that survived this long, you deserve a round of applause. I'd now like to draw your attention to the like, subscribe and notification bell icon. I don't need to explain what they do. If you like this video, do that thing. If you don't like the video, do that thing. And if you feel that this video could have been better, then please leave a comment down in the comment section below. That's where comments go, right? I do read every single comment and I enjoy replying to your comments as much as you enjoy typing them. That's a weird sort of dynamic to have for sure. Also, please ring the notification bell icon, because every single time I upload a new video, you will be notified, so you won't miss out on any of my content. Thank you once again for watching this video. I hope you learned something. Take care, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. I don't know why I'm doing the karate choppy thingies, but... Ich, ni, song.